Jai Hind everyone. In this video, we are covering chapter 2 of Lakshmikant's polity, that is making of the constitution. So in the previous videos, we have covered the company rule and crown rule, and that is the historical background, which is the first chapter. And here we are starting with the work of Constituent Assembly and its process to come up with a new constitution for the country, that is India. So let's get started. Demand for a Constituent Assembly. So what is the first topic? That is demand for Constituent Assembly. It was in 1934 that the idea of a Constituent Assembly for India was put forward for the first time. So who has put forward for the first time? It was M.N. Roy. M.N. Roy was the first person who put forward for the idea of Constituent Assembly in 1934. Who is M.N. Roy? He is a member of or pioneer of communist movement in India. And later in 1935, it was M.N. Roy in 1934, and in 1935, Indian National Congress officially demanded a Constituent Assembly to frame the Constitution of India. So in 1935, Indian National Congress officially demanded for a Constituent Assembly. And again, in 1938, Jawaharlal Nehru, on behalf of the INC, the Constitution of Free India must be framed without outside interference by a Constituent Assembly elected on the basis of adult franchise. So what are the conditions that has put forward by Jawaharlal Nehru? That the Constitution of India should be made without outsider interference. That means without British influence and by a Constituent Assembly elected on the basis of adult franchise. So these are the two conditions given by Jawaharlal Nehru. And the next one, but it was given in 1938, but the British accepted this in which year? That is 1940. And what is the reason? Because of the Second World War, which started in 1939, and British was in a state where it needed the country's support. So in order to gain India's support, British finally accepted, and they have come up with something called August Offer in 1940. So the demand was finally accepted in principle by the British government in what is known as August Offer in 1940. In 1942, Sir Stafford Cripps, a member of the cabinet, came to India with a draft proposal of the British government on the framing of independent constitution to be adopted after the World War II. So this person, Sir Stafford Cripps, who came in 1942, he has come up with a draft proposal for the independent constitution of India, which will be enforced after World War II. However, this Cripps proposal was rejected by Muslim League. So what did Muslim League want then? It wanted a separate constitution that is independent of India. So it basically wanted partition. So that's why this Cripps proposal was rejected by Muslim League. So Muslim League, which wanted India to be divided into two autonomous states with two separate constituent assemblies. Finally, a cabinet mission was sent to India. While it rejected the idea of two constituent assemblies. So this cabinet mission, it rejected the idea of two constituent assemblies. It put forth a scheme for the constituent assembly, which more or less satisfied with the Muslim League. So it rejected the idea of two constituent assemblies, but put forth a scheme of constituent assembly, where the provisions were, and the Muslim League's reaction is indifferent to it. Now, let's go through the composition of the Constituent Assembly. First of all, when was it constituted? It was constituted in November 1946 under the scheme formulated by the Cabinet Mission Plan. So by Cabinet Mission Plan, the Constituent Assembly was formulated in November 1946. The total strength of the Constituent Assembly was to be 389. So what is the total strength? That is 389. Out of this, 296 were to be British. 296 seats were allotted to British India, and then 93 seats were allotted to the princely states. So what happened? Out of 296 allotted to British India, 292 members. So 292 members were to be drawn from 11 governor provinces. So these provinces like Bengal, Madras, Bombay, Assam, Bihar, United Provinces. There are 11 governor provinces. Out of this, 292 members will come, and 4 members from Chief Commissioner, provinces, one from each. Each province and princely state were to be allotted seats in proportion on their respective population. So how is this devolution has taken place? 296 and 93 based on the population. Roughly, one seat was to be allotted for every million population. So for every 10 lakh population, one seat was allotted. Seats allocated to each British province were to be divided among three principal communities. So out of 296 seats that were allotted to British provinces, these have to be divided among Muslims, Sikhs, and general. So under general, everybody except Muslims and Sikhs comes, okay, in proportion to their population. The representatives of each community were to be elected by members of that community in that provincial legislative assembly. Voting was to be done by the method of proportional representation by means of single transferable vote. So for members or for the seats under British India, for that elections were held, and for representatives of principal states, they were nominated by whom? By the heads of principal states. So from this we can say that Constituent Assembly is both elected and nominated body. So there was nomination and there was election, and the members constituted both. It is thus clear that the Constituent Assembly was to be a partly elected and partly nominated body. Moreover, the members were to be indirectly elected by the members of provincial assemblies. So what happened here? In British India's provinces, under the seats, the members were indirectly elected, who themselves were elected on limited franchise. So we knew under the crown rule also, the voting rights were not given to everybody. It was based on education, property they held, and power, like that. So among limited franchise, whoever were elected, they indirectly elected the members to the Constituent Assembly. The elections to the Constituent Assembly were held in July-August 1946. So these elections were for British Indian provinces, that is for 296. In that 1946 elections, Congress won how many seats? 208 seats. Whereas Muslim League won 73 seats, and the small groups and independents got the remaining 50 seats. So out of 296, 208 were won by Congress, 73 by Muslim League, and 15 by independents and small groups. However, 93 seats allotted to the princely states were not filled, as they decided to stay away from the Constituent Assembly. So there was no participation from the princely states, so that 93 seats that were allotted to them were vacant. Although the Constituent Assembly was not directly elected by the people of India on the basis of adult franchise, the assembly comprised representatives of all sections of Indian society like Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Parsis, Anglo-Indians, Indian Christians, SCs, STs, including women of all these sections. The assembly included all important personalities of India at that time, with the exception of Mahatma Gandhi. So Mahatma Gandhi was not a member of Constituent Assembly. And one more feature is, although there was indirect election to the Constituent Assembly, the members of the assembly represented all sections of the then Indian society. Now the next one is working of the Constituent Assembly. First meeting of Constituent Assembly was held on 9th December 1946. The elections were in July and August, and the first meeting was in December 9th, 1946. The Muslim League boycotted the meeting and insisted on a separate state of Pakistan. So from the first meeting itself, the Muslim League started boycotting the sessions. The meeting was thus attended by only 211 members. So in the first session, how many members attended? Only 211 out of 389. Dr. Sachidananda Sinha. Dr. Sachidananda Sinha, the oldest member, was elected as temporary president following the French practice. So in French practice, the eldest member will be the temporary head for any organization or group. So following that practice, Dr. Sachidananda Sinha was made the temporary president. Later, Rajendra Prasad. Dr. Rajendra Prasad was elected as the president of assembly, and H.C. Mukherjee and V.T. Krishnamachari as the vice presidents. In prelims to 2024, one of these members, so among H.C. Mukherjee and V.T. Krishnamachari, there was a question like who was the vice president of the assembly? I don't remember the options, but it is regarding this question. So there is so much weightage for Lakshmikant when it comes to UPSC examinations. So what happened? After the elections, Dr. Rajendra Prasad was elected as the president of the assembly, whereas H.C. Mukherjee and V.T. Krishnamachari were elected as vice presidents. So the assembly had two vice presidents. Objective resolution. On December 13, 1946, Jawaharlal Nehru moved the historical objectives resolution in the assembly. It laid down the fundamentals and philosophy of the constitutional structure. So let's see what is the objectives resolution. This constituent assembly declares its firm and solemn resolve to proclaim India as an independent sovereign republic and to draw up for her future governance a constitution. So what this objective resolution demanded for a constitution for its future governance, wherein the territories that now comprise British India, the territories that now form the Indian states, such other parts of India or outside India, and the states as well as other territories are willing to be constituted into the independent sovereign India shall be a union of them. So what happened? Whatever the territory that is under British India and whatever is that forms Indian states, and also other parts of India that are outside India, and the states as well as other territories which are willing to be part of which are willing to be part of the country, can be a union of them all, wherein the said territories, whether with their present boundaries or with such others as may be determined by the Constituent Assembly, and therefore according to the law of the Constitution, shall retain the status of autonomous units together with residuary powers and exercise all powers and functions of government and administration, save and except such powers and functions as are vested in or assigned to the Union, or as are inherent or applied in the Union, or resulting therefrom, and wherein all power and authority of the sovereign independent India, its constituent parts and organs of the government are derived from the people. So what is telling here, whatever the authority and power that the sovereign independent India will have, and also its constituent parts and organs like maybe the states and the state governments, will derive their power from whom? From the people of India. Wherein shall be guaranteed, secure to all the people of India, justice, social, economical, political, equality of status of opportunity before the law, freedom of thought, expression, belief, worship, vocation, association, and action subject to law and public morality. So all this will be guaranteed and secured to the people of India, wherein adequate safeguards shall be provided for minorities, backward and tribal areas, depressed and other backward classes. So for all these sections of the society, adequate safeguards will be provided, whereby shall be maintained the integrity of the territory of the public and its sovereign on land, sea, air, according to justice and law of civilized nation. So the integrity of the territory and the sovereign rights over its land, sea, and air will be maintained according to the justice and law of civilized nations. This ancient land attains its rightful and honored place in the world and makes its full and willing contribution to the promotion of world peace and the welfare of the mankind. So this nation will make sure it will promote the world peace and welfare of mankind. This objectives resolution was unanimously adopted by the Assembly on which date? 22nd January 1947. So on 13th December 1946, Jawaharlal Nehru laid down this historic objectives resolution, and it was adopted on 22nd January 1947. Now we'll see some of the changes that has been brought by Independence Act 1947. The representatives of the princely states who had stayed away from Constituent Assembly gradually joined it. So if you see the first session that was in 9th December, only 211 members attended out of 389. But gradually, the members of the 93 members of princely states gradually started joining the session. On April 28, 1947, representatives of the 6 states were part of assembly. So on 28th April, six members of 6 states were part of assembly. After the acceptance of Mountbatten Plan on 3rd June 1947 for the partition of the country, the representatives of the most of the other princely states took their seats in the assembly. So after the Mountbatten Plan, the other members also of other princely states took their seats. The members of Muslim League from the Indian Dominion also entered the country. So we know we have members of Muslim League from both India and Pakistan. So after Mountbatten Plan, what happened? The members of Muslim League who were from Indian Dominion, who were from the territory that is after the Mountbatten Plan is in India, they also started joining the assembly. And this Indian Independence Act of 1947 made 3 changes in the position of assembly. That is, the assembly was made a fully sovereign body. So what happened? The assembly is sovereign to frame any constitution it pleased. The act empowered the assembly to abrogate or alter any law made by the British Parliament. So the assembly had all the powers to make any constitution it pleased, and it can also have repeal any act made by the British Parliament in relation to India. Next, the assembly also becomes a legislative body. So till the new constitution is framed, the Constituent Assembly should also take care of the legislative process, that is making laws for regular governance. So for this, the assembly was performing dual function. One, that is legislative body. Second is constituent body. In other words, 2 separate functions were assigned to assembly, that is making of the constitution for free India and enacting of ordinary laws for the country. These 2 tasks were to be performed on separate days. So on one day in one sitting, they cannot perform the both functions of framing constitution and enacting ordinary laws. So the assembly became the first parliament of free India whenever assembly met as a constituent body. So whenever the assembly is meeting as constituent body, it becomes the Parliament of Free India. So who is the chairman of constituent body? Rajendra Prasad, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, as he was elected. But when the assembly is meeting as a legislative body, the president chaired person was G.V. Mavlankar. So for 2 different functions, there were 2 different chairmen. And how long these functions were performed? These 2 functions continued till 26th November 1949, when the task of making the constitution was over. So when did the task of making the constitution was completed? It was on 26th January 1949, all the way from 9th December 1946. So it has taken almost 3 years. The Muslim League members hailing from the areas included in the Pakistan withdrew from the Constituent Assembly. So what happened? The Muslim League members hailing from the areas included in Pakistan withdrew from Constituent Assembly. Consequently, the total strength of assembly came to 299 from 389. So originally it was 389. And after the withdrawal of members of Muslim League, it came to 299. The strength of Indian provinces and those of princely states has come from 93 to 70. So not only the total strength, but also the strength of princely states also has decreased from 93 to 70. The state-wise membership of the assembly is as on 31st December 1947 is shown in table 2.4. We'll see it later. Now, what are the other functions that were performed by the Constituent Assembly? In addition to the making of constitution and enacting of ordinary laws, the Constituent Assembly also performed the following functions. What? It ratified India's membership of Commonwealth in May 1949. So what is Commonwealth? It is like a voluntary organization of the countries that were once part of on which British had its paramountcy or British ruled. So it is to cooperate, bring cooperation among the countries for the development. So India, when did it ratify its in membership? It was in May 1949. Next, it adopted the national flag on 22nd July 1947. So when was the national flag was adopted? 22nd July 1947. And the national anthem on 24th January 1950. What is the national anthem? Janagana Mana, which was given by Rabindranath Tagore. And on the same day, it also adopted the national song, that is Vande Mataram, which was written by Bankim Chandra Chatterjee. And recently, the song also completed 150 years. So these two, national anthem and national song, were adopted on 24th January 1950 and national flag on 22nd July 1947. It elected Dr. Rajendra Prasad as the first president of India on 24th January 1950. So three things happened on 24th January 1950, that is adoption of national anthem and national song, and Dr. Rajendra Prasad was elected as the first president of India. In all, the Constituent Assembly had 11 sessions. So how many sessions it took to complete the constitution framing? 11 sessions over 2 years, 11 months and 18 days. The constitution makers had gone through the constitutions of about 60 countries. So the constitutions of 60 countries were checked in order to make our constitution. And the draft constitution was considered for 140 days. The total expenditure incurred on making the constitution amounted to 64 lakhs. So this was the total spending that was made for framing the constitution. On 24 January 1950, the Constituent Assembly held its final session. So on 24 January 1950, Assembly held its final session. It, however, did not end and continued as the Provincial Parliament of India from 26th January 1950 till the formation of new parliament after the first general elections in 1951 to 52. So what happened? Although Assembly held its final session on 24th January 1950, it continued to be the provincial parliament till the formation of new parliament after the first general elections, which took place in 1951. Now, these are some of the committees that are important, and these committees of the Constituent Assembly. Now, let's have a quick overview. The Constituent Assembly appointed a number of committees to deal with different tasks of constitution making. Out of these, 8 were major committees. So, how many major committees? 8, and the others were minor committees. Out of this, the major committees are: first one, Union Powers Committee, headed by Jawaharlal Nehru, and also Union Constitution, which is also headed by Jawaharlal Nehru. And then we have Provincial Constitution, that is by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. And then we have Drafting Committee, which is headed by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. And we have Advisory Committee on Fundamental Rights, Minorities, and Tribal and Excluded Areas, which is headed by Sardar Patel. Under this committee, we have 5 subcommittees. That is Fundamental Rights Subcommittee, headed by J.B. Kripalani. Minorities Subcommittee, headed by H.C. Mukherjee. Who is H.C. Mukherjee? He is the Vice President of the Constituent Assembly. And then we have Northeast Frontier Tribal Areas and Assam Excluded and Partially Excluded Areas Subcommittee, which is headed by Gopinath Bardoloi. If you remember, yesterday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the aircraft in Assam, which is also named after Gopinath Bardoloi. Excluded and Partially Excluded Area Subcommittee, headed by A.V. Thakur. Northwest Frontier Tribal Area Subcommittee. So these are all the 5 subcommittees under this Advisory Committee on Fundamental Rights and Minorities. And then we have Rules of Procedure Committee, headed by Rajendra Prasad. States Committee by Jawaharlal Nehru. So what are the three committees headed by Jawaharlal Nehru? Union Constitution, Union Powers, and States Committee. Whereas rights of minorities and provincial constitution, that is headed by Sardar Patel, and rules of procedure and steering committee headed by Dr. Rajendra Prasad. So these are all the major committees, and one is drafting committee, which is headed by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Now we have some of the minor committees which you can go through. I'll just give a pause so that you can read it. Okay. Now we have drafting committee. The most important committee was drafting committee, which was set up on August 29, 1947. So it was set up in August 1947. It was this committee that was entrusted with the task of preparing a draft of the new constitution, and drafting committee had 7 members. How many? 7. So, and who is the chairman? Ambedkar. And we have Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer, Gopalaswamy Iyengar, K.M. Munshi, Syed Muhammad Sadullah, N. Madhava Rao. He replaced B.L. Mitter, who resigned due to ill health. And then we have T.T. Krishnamachari. He replaced D.P. Khaitan, who died in 1948. The drafting committee, after taking into consideration the proposals of the various committees, prepared the first draft and published it in February 1948. So when was the first draft published? February 1948. The people of India were given 8 months to discuss the draft and propose amendments. In the light of public comments, criticisms, and suggestions, the drafting committee prepared a second draft, which was published in October 1948. The drafting committee took less than 6 months to prepare its draft. In all, it sat only for 141 days. So out of 2 years, 11 months, and 18 days, it has sit down to prepare the draft for just 141 days. Now, next, the enactment of the Constitution. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar introduced a final draft of the Constitution in the Assembly on November 4th, 1948. This is the first reading. They had a general discussion for 5 days, and the second reading started from 15th November 1948 and ended on 17 October 1949. And here, these many 7653 amendments were proposed, whereas 2473 were discussed. And the third reading was on 14 November 1949. Ambedkar moved a motion, the Constitution as settled by the Assembly be passed. The motion of the draft Constitution was declared as passed on 26th November 1949. So when was the Constitution motion passed to pass the Constitution? 14th November, and declared as passed on 26th November. Out of total 299 members of the Assembly, only 284 actually present on that day and signed the Constitution. So how many signed the Constitution? 284. This is also the date mentioned in the preamble. So which was the date mentioned in the preamble? Not 26th January 1950, but 26th November 1949. On which the people of India in the Constituent Assembly adopted, enacted, and gave to themselves this Constitution. The Constitution as adopted on November 26, 1949 contained a preamble, 395 articles, and 8 schedules. So this is the composition of Indian Constitution. The preamble was enacted after the entire Constitution was already enacted. So the preamble has come up into force, enacted after the entire Constitution was enacted. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the then law minister, piloted the draft Constitution in the Assembly. He took a very prominent part in the deliberations of the Assembly. He was known for his logical, forceful, and persuasive arguments on the floor of Assembly. He recognized as the father of Constitution of India. So he is the father of Constitution of India, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. This brilliant writer, constitutional expert, and undisputed leader of the scheduled castes is also known as Chief Architect of the Constitution of India. He is also the chairman of drafting committee, and he is also known as Chief Architect of the Constitution of India. Now, although it was enacted on 26 January 1949, the constitution was enforced on 26 January 1950. But there were some articles of the constitution that were started being in force from 26th November only. Now we'll see some what are they. They include articles 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 60, 324, 366, 367, 379, 380, 388, 391, 392, 393. So these all came into force on 26th January 26th November 1949 only. The remaining provisions of the Constitution came into force on 26th January 1950. This day is referred to in the Constitution as the day of its commencement and celebrated as the Republic Day. 26th January was specifically chosen as the date of commencement because of its historical importance. Why? It was on this day in 1930, the Purna Swaraj Day was celebrated following the resolution of Lahore session in December 1929 of NIC. So, in December 1929 of Lahore session, Indian National Congress declared that they will celebrate January 26 as the Purna Swaraj Day. So, in 1930, they celebrated, and this is why it is called the date of its commencement. With the commencement of the Constitution, the Indian Independence Act, the Government of India Act 1935, with all enactments amending or supplementing the later act were repealed. So these all acts were repealed. The abolition of Privy Council Jurisdiction Act 1947 was, however, continued. So this one, abolition of Privy Council Jurisdiction Act 1947 was continued. Now, experts committees of the Congress. While elections to the Constituent Assembly were still in progress, on July 8, 1946, the Congress Party appointed an experts committee for the purpose of preparing material for the Constituent Assembly. So what happened? Experts committee was constituted to prepare material for the Constituent Assembly, and we'll see who are the members. First one is Jawaharlal Nehru, who is the chairman. Next, Asaf Ali, K.M. Munshi, N. Gopalaswamy Iyengar, K.T. Shah, D.R. Gadgil, Humayun Kabir, and K. Sandanam. So these are the members of the experts committee. Later, on the chairman's proposal, it was resolved that Krishna Kripalani be co-opted as member and convener of the committee. So Krishna Kripalani was the co-opted as member, and he is also the convener of the committee. The committee had 2 sittings, the first at New Delhi from 20 to 22nd July 1946 and second at Bombay from 15 to 17 August 1946. Apart from a number of notes prepared by its members, the committee discussed the procedure to be adopted by the Constituent Assembly, the questions of the appointment of various committees, and the draft of a resolution on the objectives of the Constitution to be moved during the first session. So they basically did homework on how the Constituent Assembly should be run or should work. On the role played by this committee in the making of Constitution, Granville Austin, an American constitutional expert. It was the Congress Experts Committee that set India on the road to her present constitution. So he said this. Who said this? Granville Austin. The committee members working within the framework of the cabinet mission scheme made general suggestions about autonomous areas, the powers of provincial governments and the center, and about such issues as the princely states and the amending power. They also drafted a resolution closely resembling the objectives resolution. So this is some of the information about experts committee. Now we'll see some of the criticism of a Constituent Assembly. We'll see what each critic has told about, because these can be asked as a statements in the examination, like who has said about this. The first one is not a representative body. So it was told that the Constituent Assembly was not a representative body. And next, what it is called, not a sovereign body, because it was created by the proposals of the British government. So that's why it is told that it was not a sovereign body. And then time consuming. Unduly long time, because it has taken almost 3 years to come up with the Constitution, whereas American Constitution took only 4 months to complete work. Naziruddin Ahmad. member of Constituent Assembly coined a new term for drafting committee as drifting committee. So who told this? Naziruddin Ahmad. Dominated by Congress. Who said this? By Gronville Austin, who also talked about expert committee. The Constituent Assembly was a one-party body in an essentially one-party country. So who said this? By Gronville Austin. Next, we have lawyer-politician domination. So most of the members who were part of Constituent Assembly were dominated by lawyers and politicians. Dominated by Hindus. So who told this? Lord Viscount Simon. So called it a body of Hindus. Similarly, Winston Churchill commented that the Constituent Assembly represented only one major community in India. This was said by Churchill. Now we have some of the important facts. The first one is, what is the seal of Constituent Assembly? That is elephant. So elephant was adopted as the seal or symbol of the Constituent Assembly. And Sir B.N. Rao was appointed as the constitutional advisor or legal advisor to the assembly. Then the secretary is H.V.R. Iyengar. So H.V.R. Iyengar is the secretary and B.N. Rao was the legal advisor. And then we have S.N. Mukherjee, who was the chief draftsman of the constitution. So who is the chief draftsman? It is S.N. Mukherjee. And then we have the calligraphers. Calligrapher is Prem Bihari Narain Razaida. So he has written in flowing italic style. So he is the calligrapher of the constitution. The original constitution was handwritten by him in a flowing italic style. And who has done the beautification and decorations to the constitution? It was Nandlal Bose and Biohar Ram Manohar Sinha. So these are the two people who has done beautification decorations to the original version. And then we have Ram Manohar Sinha illuminated, beautified and ornamented the original preamble calligraphy. So the preamble also was calligraphied by Prem Bihari and decorated by Ram Manohar Sinha. The calligraphy of Hindi version was done by Vasant Krishnan Vaidya and elegantly decorated by Nandlal Bose. Now, Hindi text. Originally, the Constitution of India did not make any provision with respect to an authoritative text of the Constitution. So, originally, there was no Hindi text of the Constitution. Later, by 58th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1987, a new article inserted, that is 394A, in the last part of the Constitution, that is part 22. This article contains the following provisions, that is the translation of the Constitution in Hindi language, the modifications which are necessary to bring it in conformity with the language. So it is basically talked about the translation of the Constitution into Hindi without changing the meaning. And these are all the provinces, how many members who came from each province under British and also from princely states. And these are the sessions held by the Constituent Assembly, their dates, and it is the time taken by framers of other constitutions like USA, Canada, Australia. And related, this is the last table is related to the articles related to Hindi text. So this is all about making of the Indian Constitution. Everything is covered according to Lakshmikant's polity. So we'll meet in the next class with the next chapter. Until then, please like and share the video if you think it is beneficial. Jai Hind.